Sarah Martinez had never imagined that her summer job at Thunder Ridge Shooting Range would change her life forever. At 22, she was just trying to save enough money for her final year of college while living in her small hometown of Cedar Falls. The job seemed simple enough: replace targets, clean the shooting lanes, and help customers with basic equipment. She had grown up around guns thanks to her father's hunting hobby, but she had never considered herself particularly skilled with firearms. The shooting range sat on the outskirts of town, surrounded by rolling hills and dense forest. It was owned by retired Marine Colonel James Henderson, a gruff but fair man in his 60s who had opened the facility after his military service. Sarah had been working there for 3 weeks when she first noticed the group of serious-looking men who came in every Tuesday morning. They arrived in black SUVs, always dressed in civilian clothes, but there was something unmistakably military about their bearing. They moved with purpose, spoke in short, clipped sentences, and handled their weapons with the kind of expertise that only came from years of intensive training. Colonel Henderson always personally attended to them, and Sarah noticed how even her tough boss seemed to show them extra respect. On this particular Tuesday morning in July, Sarah was going about her usual routine. The summer heat was already building, and she had pulled her long dark hair back in a practical ponytail. She wore her standard work uniform, khaki pants and a Thunder Ridge polo shirt, along with the required safety glasses and ear protection. The morning had been quiet with only a few regular customers, mostly local hunters zeroing their rifles for the upcoming deer season. She was wheeling her cart full of fresh paper targets down the lane when she heard the familiar rumble of the black SUVs pulling into the parking lot. Through the large windows of the range, she could see 5 men getting out of the vehicles. They moved with that same purposeful stride she had come to recognize, carrying large black cases that she assumed contained their weapons. Sarah continued with her work, systematically replacing the shot-up targets with fresh ones. She had developed an efficient system over the past few weeks: remove the damaged target, clip on a new one, adjust the pulley system, and move to the next lane. It was repetitive work, but she didn't mind. The job gave her time to think about her upcoming senior year and her plans after graduation. As she worked on Lane 12, she became aware of intense activity at the far end of the range. The group of men had set up what looked like a complex training scenario. They weren't just shooting at stationary targets like most customers. Instead, they had arranged multiple targets at different distances and were running through what appeared to be tactical drills. Sarah tried not to stare, but she couldn't help being fascinated by their precision and coordination. They moved like a well-oiled machine, each man knowing exactly where the others would be at any given moment. Their shooting was unlike anything she had ever witnessed: rapid, accurate, and deadly effective. She was so absorbed in watching them that she didn't notice one of the men approaching her station until he cleared his throat softly. Sarah jumped slightly and turned to face him. He was tall, probably in his early 30s, with short brown hair and intense green eyes. Like the others, he was dressed casually in jeans and a plain t-shirt, but his posture and the way he carried himself screamed military. "Excuse me," he said, his voice calm and professional. "Are you the range assistant?" "Yes, sir," Sarah replied, suddenly feeling self-conscious. "I'm Sarah. Is there something you need?" The man studied her for a moment, his eyes taking in her efficient work setup and the way she handled herself around the firearms and equipment. "I couldn't help but notice your technique when you were adjusting those target mechanisms. You seem to know your way around this place pretty well." Sarah felt a flush of pride at the compliment, though she tried to remain professional. "I've been working here for a few weeks now. My father taught me basic gun safety when I was younger, so I'm comfortable around firearms." "What's your background?" the man asked, genuine curiosity in his voice. "College student," Sarah admitted. "Studying business administration at State. This is just a summer job to help pay for school." The man nodded thoughtfully. "Have you ever done any serious shooting?" "Competition? Training?" Sarah shook her head. "Not really. Just some recreational shooting with my dad, mostly hunting rifles and the occasional handgun. Nothing like what you guys are doing over there." She gestured toward the elaborate setup at the other end of the range, where his teammates were continuing their intensive training regimen. The sound of rapid gunfire punctuated their conversation at regular intervals. "We're conducting some specialized training exercises," the man explained without going into details. "I'm Marcus, by the way. Marcus Thompson." "Nice to meet you, Marcus," Sarah said, extending her hand for a brief handshake. His grip was firm and confident, exactly what she would have expected. "Sarah, can I ask you something?" Marcus said, his expression becoming more serious. "Have you ever wondered what you might be capable of if you had the right training and opportunity?" The question caught her off guard. "I'm not sure I understand what you mean." Marcus glanced back at his team, then returned his attention to her. "I've been doing this kind of work for over a decade. You develop an eye for people who have natural ability, the kind of instincts and coordination that can't really be taught. Some people have it, most don't." Sarah felt her heart rate increase slightly. There was something in his tone that suggested this conversation was heading somewhere unexpected. "From what I've observed this morning," Marcus continued, "you move with confidence around weapons and equipment. Your situational awareness is good. You knew we were here before we approached. You've been tracking our activities without being obvious about it, and you handle yourself professionally under pressure. I'm not sure those are particularly special qualities," Sarah said, though she was flattered by his assessment. "Trust me," Marcus said with a slight smile. "They're more rare than you might think. Most people freeze up or get nervous around serious operators. You're treating us like any other customers, which tells me you have good composure." Before Sarah could respond, Colonel Henderson's voice boomed across the range. "Sarah, can you get those gentlemen whatever they need? I've got to handle some paperwork in the office." "Yes, sir," Sarah called back, then turned to Marcus. "Is there anything specific I can help you with?" Marcus looked at her thoughtfully for a long moment, as if making some kind of internal calculation. "Actually, there might be something. Are you free for the next hour or so?" Sarah felt a mix of curiosity and nervousness as she looked at Marcus. His question about whether she was free seemed loaded with possibility, though she couldn't quite figure out what he had in mind. "I'm scheduled to work until closing," she said carefully. "But Colonel Henderson is pretty flexible if there's something important." "What did you have in mind?" Marcus glanced over at his teammates, who were taking a brief break between drills. "My team and I are working on some precision shooting exercises today. We could use an extra set of eyes, someone to help spot targets and track accuracy. Would you be interested in observing? You might learn something useful." The offer intrigued Sarah more than she cared to admit. She had been curious about their training methods since the first day she had seen them, but she had never imagined she might get a chance to see their work up close. "I'd need to check with Colonel Henderson," she said, "but if he's okay with it, I'd love to watch. I mean, if you're sure I won't be in the way." "You won't be in the way," Marcus assured her. "In fact, you might be helpful. We're working on some scenarios that require precise target identification and damage assessment. Having someone with your observational skills could be valuable." Sarah felt a thrill at being considered potentially valuable to these obviously elite operators. "Let me go ask the colonel." She found Colonel Henderson in his office, hunched over a stack of paperwork and looking slightly annoyed by the administrative side of running a business. When Sarah explained the situation, his eyebrows rose in surprise. "They want you to help with their training?" he asked, studying her face carefully. "Marcus said they could use someone to help spot targets and assess accuracy," Sarah explained. "I think he was just being polite, but I'd really like to learn more about what they do." Colonel Henderson leaned back in his chair and was quiet for a long moment. Sarah knew he had worked with these men before, and she could see him weighing something in his mind. "Sarah," he said finally, "those men aren't just any military unit. They're Navy SEALs, and they're here doing some very specialized training. If they've asked for your help, it's because they see something in you that most people don't have." Sarah's eyes widened. Navy SEALs. She had suspected they were elite military, but hearing it confirmed made her realize just how significant this opportunity might be. "Do you think I should do it?" she asked. "I think," Colonel Henderson said slowly, "that opportunities like this don't come along very often. Go ahead, but remember, these men are professionals. Watch, listen, and learn everything you can." Sarah hurried back to where Marcus was waiting. His teammates had finished their break and were setting up for their next exercise. The setup was more complex than anything Sarah had seen before. Multiple targets at varying distances, some stationary and others designed to move or pop up at different times. Colonel Henderson said, "It's fine," Sarah reported. "What do you need me to do?" "For now, just observe," Marcus said, handing her a pair of high-quality binoculars. "We're going to run through a series of scenarios. I want you to track which targets we hit, assess the accuracy of each shot, and note anything unusual you see. Can you handle that? I think so, Sarah said, accepting the binoculars. They were much more sophisticated than anything she had used before, with crystal-clear optics and precise adjustment mechanisms. Good. And Sarah? Marcus looked at her seriously. Everything you see here stays here. This isn't training you'll ever see duplicated at a civilian range. Sarah nodded her understanding and Marcus rejoined his team. She positioned herself at the observation area and focused the binoculars on the target range. What she witnessed over the next hour challenged everything she thought she knew about marksmanship. The SEALs moved through their exercises with a precision that seemed almost supernatural. They engaged multiple targets in rapid succession, transitioning between different weapon systems with fluid efficiency. Sarah found herself completely absorbed in tracking their performance, noting the tiny details Marcus had asked her to observe. But as the exercises progressed, Sarah began to notice something that surprised her. While all the operators were exceptionally skilled, their performance wasn't uniform. Some shots were perfect, others were very good, but not quite on target. She started to see patterns in the slight variations, understanding how fatigue, weapon transition, and target distance affected even these elite shooters. When they took another break, Marcus approached her observation position. "What did you see?" he asked. Sarah hesitated, not sure if she should voice her observations. "Are you sure you want my amateur opinion?" "I'm sure," Marcus said. "Tell me what you noticed." "Well," Sarah began carefully, "your team's accuracy was incredible, but I noticed some interesting patterns. The shots from the prone position were consistently more accurate than the standing shots, which makes sense. But I also noticed that accuracy decreased slightly after weapon transitions, especially when moving from rifle to handgun." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "What else?" "The moving targets were obviously more challenging, but there seemed to be a slight delay in target acquisition when the targets changed direction. And—" She paused, wondering if she should continue. "And what?" "I noticed that you consistently shot slightly high on targets beyond 300 meters. Not by much, but enough that I could see a pattern." Marcus stared at her for a long moment, then broke into a genuine smile. "That's remarkably observant, Sarah. You picked up on some details that took me months of training to recognize." "Really?" Sarah felt a surge of pride mixed with disbelief. "Really? You have a natural eye for this kind of analysis?" Marcus paused, looking thoughtful. "Can I ask you something? Have you ever considered that there might be more to your life than business school?" The question hit Sarah like a physical impact. "What do you mean?" "I mean," Marcus said carefully, "that you have skills that are extremely rare and extremely valuable. The kind of observational ability you just demonstrated, combined with your composure and intelligence, could take you places you've never imagined." Sarah felt her world shifting slightly. This conversation was heading in a direction she had never anticipated when she had gotten up for work that morning. "I don't understand," she said. "Are you talking about military service?" "Not exactly," Marcus replied. "There are other options. Other paths for people with your particular combination of abilities." Before Sarah could ask what he meant, one of his teammates called out that they were ready for the next exercise. Marcus looked frustrated by the interruption. "We'll talk more after this next drill," he promised. "But Sarah, I want you to try something. Instead of just observing this time, I want you to call out target priorities as you see them. Tell us which targets you think we should engage first and in what order." "But I don't know anything about tactical priorities," Sarah protested. "Trust your instincts," Marcus said. "You've been watching us all morning. You understand more than you realize." As Marcus rejoined his team, Sarah felt a mixture of excitement and anxiety. Whatever was happening here, it was bigger than just helping with target spotting. She had the distinct feeling that this day was going to change the direction of her life in ways she couldn't yet imagine. Sarah's hands trembled slightly as she raised the binoculars to watch the next exercise. The weight of Marcus's request to call out target priorities felt enormous. She was just a college student working a summer job, and now she was being asked to make tactical decisions for Navy SEALs. The team took their positions at the firing line. This drill was different from the previous ones. Instead of following a predetermined sequence, they were waiting for her guidance. Sarah studied the target array through her binoculars, trying to apply the logic she had observed in their earlier exercises. The setup included targets at various distances and elevations. Some were partially concealed behind barriers, others were in the open. A few were designed to move on mechanical systems, Sarah tried to think like the operators she had been watching, considering factors like threat level, accessibility, and tactical advantage. "Okay," she called out, her voice stronger than she felt. "Start with the elevated target at 2 o'clock, 200 meters. It has the best overview of the entire field." Without hesitation, the lead operator engaged the target. Perfect hit. "Now the moving target on the left flank," Sarah continued, gaining confidence. "It's going to disappear behind cover in about 5 seconds. Again, immediate engagement and a clean hit." Sarah continued calling targets, and to her amazement, the team followed her directions without question. More importantly, her instinctive choices seemed to make tactical sense. When the exercise concluded, all targets had been neutralized efficiently with minimal ammunition expenditure. Marcus jogged over to her position, his face showing genuine surprise and approval. "Sarah, that was exceptional. Where did those instincts come from?" "I honestly don't know," Sarah admitted. "I was just trying to think about which targets posed the biggest threat or would be hardest to hit if you waited." "That's exactly the kind of thinking we train for years to develop," Marcus said. "And you did it naturally, without any formal instruction." The other team members gathered around, and Sarah felt suddenly self-conscious. These were elite warriors, and she was just a small-town college student. But their expressions showed respect, not condescension. "Marcus is right," said the team leader, a compact man with graying temples who introduced himself only as chief. "I've been doing this for 15 years, and I've rarely seen someone with no training demonstrate that level of tactical intuition." Sarah felt overwhelmed by the praise, but also confused about what it all meant. "I appreciate the compliments, but I'm still not sure why this matters." "I'm not planning a military career." The team exchanged glances, and Sarah sensed some kind of silent communication passing between them. "Sarah," Chief said carefully, "can we speak privately for a moment?" Marcus nodded to his teammates, who moved away to clean their weapons and pack their equipment. Chief gestured for Sarah to follow him to a quiet corner of the range. "What I'm about to tell you doesn't leave this room," Chief began, his tone serious. "There are opportunities in government service that go beyond traditional military roles. Positions that require exactly the kind of natural ability you've demonstrated today." Sarah's heart began beating faster. "What kind of positions?" "Intelligence work, analysis, field operations that require someone who can think clearly under pressure and assess complex situations quickly." Chief studied her face. "Have you ever considered that your business degree might be more valuable in combination with other skills than it would be on its own?" The suggestion was both thrilling and terrifying. Sarah had grown up in a small town where the most exotic career options were teaching, nursing, or maybe working for the county government. The idea that she might have abilities suited for intelligence work seemed like something out of a movie. "I don't know," she said honestly. "I've never really thought about anything like that. And besides, don't those jobs require years of training and background checks and security clearances?" "They do," Chief acknowledged. "But they also require the right raw material. Someone who can be trained. Most importantly, someone who has the natural instincts that can't be taught." Marcus rejoined them, carrying a rifle Sarah hadn't seen before. It was sleek and obviously expensive, with a sophisticated scope mounted on top. "Sarah," Marcus said, "I'd like you to try something. Are you willing to do a little shooting?" Sarah looked at the weapon nervously. "I've never shot anything like that. What if I embarrass myself?" "You won't," Marcus said confidently. "This is a precision rifle set up for long-range accuracy. Based on what I've seen today, I think you might surprise yourself." Chief nodded encouragingly. "We'll start with close targets and work our way out. No pressure, just curiosity about what you can do." Despite her nervousness, Sarah found herself nodding. The day had already been full of surprises, and she was curious about her own capabilities. Marcus led her to a shooting bench and carefully explained the rifle's features. The weapon was heavier than anything Sarah had handled before, but it felt solid and well-balanced. The scope was incredibly clear, bringing distant targets into sharp focus. "The fundamentals are the same as any other rifle," Marcus explained. "Proper stance, breath control, smooth trigger pull. This rifle is just more precise and powerful than what you're used to." Sarah settled into position behind the weapon, adjusting her body alignment according to Marcus's guidance. Through the scope, she could see a target at 100 meters with crystal clarity. She took a deep breath, let half of it out, and gently squeezed the trigger. The rifle's recoil was significant but manageable, and through the scope, Sarah could see that her shot had hit very close to the center of the target. "Nice shot," Marcus said, clearly pleased. "Let's try 200 meters. The second shot was equally accurate. Then 300 meters. Each time, Sarah's natural shooting ability seemed to adapt to the increased challenge. By the time they reached 500 meters, she was consistently hitting targets that would challenge experienced marksmen. "This is impossible," Sarah said, staring at the distant targets through the spotting scope. "I shouldn't be able to do this." "But you are doing it," Marcus pointed out. "Sarah, you have a gift. The question is whether you're interested in developing it." Sarah looked up from the rifle, meeting Marcus's eyes. "What exactly are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting," Marcus said carefully, "that you might want to consider some options you haven't thought about before. There are programs, opportunities, ways to use abilities like yours in service to your country." The weight of the conversation was starting to sink in. This wasn't just about being good at shooting or having keen observation skills. These men were talking about fundamentally changing the direction of her life. "I need time to think about this," Sarah said. "Of course," Chief interjected. "This isn't the kind of decision anyone makes quickly. But Sarah, I want you to understand something. Opportunities like this are rare. The combination of natural ability, intelligence, and character that you've demonstrated today doesn't come along often." As the team began packing up their equipment, Marcus handed Sarah a business card. It was plain white with only a phone number printed on it. "If you decide you'd like to learn more," he said, "call that number. Ask for Marcus Thompson. Someone will know what you're talking about." Sarah stared at the card, realizing that everything in her life had just changed. A few hours ago, she had been a college student working a summer job. Now she was being recruited for something she didn't fully understand but knew was significant. The SEALs loaded their equipment and prepared to leave, but Marcus lingered for a moment. "Whatever you decide, don't sell yourself short. You have capabilities that most people only dream of. The question is whether you're brave enough to find out where they might take you." That evening, Sarah sat on the porch of her family's small house on Maple Street, staring at the business card Marcus had given her. The simple white rectangle seemed to pulse with possibility and uncertainty. Her parents had gone to bed hours ago, leaving her alone with thoughts that refused to settle. The conversation with her parents at dinner had been difficult. When she had tried to explain what had happened at the range, they had listened with expressions ranging from pride to concern. Her mother, a high school English teacher, had worried about Sarah getting involved with dangerous government work. Her father, who worked at the local hardware store, had been more pragmatic. "Sarah," he had said, "opportunities like this don't come to people from Cedar Falls very often. But you need to think long and hard about what you want your life to look like." Now, sitting in the humid summer air with crickets chirping in the darkness, Sarah tried to imagine different versions of her future. There was the plan she had been following: finish her business degree, maybe get a job with a corporation in the nearest city, eventually marry someone local and live a comfortable, predictable life. But Marcus and his team had opened a door to something entirely different: intelligence work, field operations, using skills she hadn't even known she possessed in service of something larger than herself. The phone rang inside the house, startling her from her thoughts. Sarah glanced at her watch, 9:30 p.m. Who would be calling at this hour? Her mother appeared at the screen door. "Sarah, it's for you." "Someone named Marcus?" Sarah's heart jumped. She took the phone with hands that weren't quite steady. "Hello? Sarah, it's Marcus Thompson. I hope I'm not calling too late." "No, it's fine. I was just thinking." "Good. That's exactly what you should be doing." Marcus's voice was warm but serious. "I wanted to follow up on our conversation today. Do you have any questions about what we discussed?" Sarah took a deep breath. "I have about 1,000,000 questions, but I guess the biggest one is whether this is real. I mean, does this kind of thing actually happen to regular people?" Marcus chuckled softly. "Sarah, let me tell you something. There's nothing regular about what you did today. I've worked with recruits who had years of military training who couldn't demonstrate the natural ability you showed in a few hours." "But I'm from Cedar Falls," Sarah protested. "I go to State University. I work at a shooting range for minimum wage. I'm not spy material." "Actually," Marcus said, "that background might be exactly what makes you valuable. You're smart. You're motivated. You don't have any baggage or preconceptions about how things should work. And most importantly, you have instincts that can't be taught. Sarah walked out onto the porch carrying the cordless phone. Can you tell me more about what this would actually involve? I mean, if I were to consider it, there would be extensive training. Months of it. You'd learn everything from advanced marksmanship to intelligence analysis to foreign languages. The work itself varies. Sometimes it's analytical, sometimes it's field work. It's demanding, but it's also incredibly rewarding. And dangerous? Marcus was quiet for a moment. There can be risks, yes, but probably not as much as you're imagining. A lot of the work is about preventing problems rather than getting into firefights. Sarah found herself pacing the small porch. What about my education? I only have 1 year left. You'd finish your degree first. In fact, your business background would be valuable. Many operations involve understanding financial systems, corporate structures, international trade. Your education wouldn't be wasted. The conversation continued for nearly an hour. Marcus answered her questions patiently, never pressuring her but providing enough information for her to understand what she would be considering. When they finally hung up, Sarah felt more confused than ever, but also more intrigued. The next few days passed in a blur of routine work at the shooting range and intense internal debate. Sarah found herself analyzing every aspect of her life, weighing the security of her planned future against the excitement of the unknown. Colonel Henderson noticed her distraction and finally cornered her on Friday afternoon. Those SEALs really got to you, didn't they? He asked, not unkindly. Sarah looked up from the targets she was organizing. Is it that obvious? When someone starts questioning everything they thought they knew about their future, it tends to show, Henderson said. Want to talk about it? Sarah found herself telling the colonel everything. About the shooting, about Marcus's phone call, about the opportunity she was being offered. Henderson listened without interruption, his weathered face thoughtful. Sarah, he said when she finished, I served 25 years in the Marines. I've seen a lot of young people face decisions like this one. What do you think I should do? I think, Henderson said slowly, that you need to be honest with yourself about what you want from life. Some people are built for safety and predictability. Others need challenge and purpose. Neither choice is wrong, but you have to pick the one that fits who you really are. That weekend, Sarah drove up to the state park where she and her father used to go hiking when she was younger. She found her favorite spot by the lake and sat on a fallen log, watching the water and trying to sort through her thoughts. The truth was, she had never felt truly excited about her planned career in business. It had seemed like a safe choice, a path that would lead to a comfortable middle-class life. But comfortable and fulfilling weren't the same thing. What Marcus was offering was scary, but it was also thrilling in a way she had never experienced. The idea of using her mind and skills for something important, of being part of something larger than herself, appealed to her in ways she was only beginning to understand. By Sunday evening, Sarah had made her decision. She called the number on Marcus's card. This is Sarah Martinez, she said when the phone was answered. I'd like to learn more about the opportunities we discussed. The voice on the other end was professional but friendly. Ms. Martinez, we've been expecting your call. Are you available to travel to Washington, D.C. next week for some preliminary interviews and assessments? Washington, D.C.? Sarah's voice came out as a squeak. Nothing too formal, the voice assured her. Just a chance for you to learn more about various options and for us to get to know you better. All expenses paid, of course. Sarah took a deep breath. Yes, I'm available. Excellent. Someone will contact you tomorrow with travel arrangements. And Ms. Martinez, yes? Bring comfortable clothes suitable for physical activity, as well as business attire for meetings. The assessment process is comprehensive. After hanging up, Sarah sat staring at the phone. In less than a week, she would be in the nation's capital, being evaluated for a career she had never imagined. Her quiet summer job had turned into the adventure of a lifetime. She called her parents into the living room to break the news. As expected, her mother worried about the unknowns while her father expressed cautious pride. But both of them could see the excitement in Sarah's eyes, and they knew their daughter had found something worth pursuing. Just promise us you'll be careful, her mother said, hugging her tightly. And don't forget where you come from, her father added. Cedar Falls will always be home. Sarah promised both things, though she suspected that after next week she might see home, and everything else, very differently than she ever had before. The afternoon brought physical assessments that pushed Sarah harder than anything she had experienced before. A fitness specialist put her through endurance tests, strength measurements, and coordination challenges. While Sarah had always been reasonably athletic from hiking and outdoor activities back home, she quickly realized she would need serious conditioning if she pursued this path. Your baseline fitness is acceptable, the specialist noted, but you'll need significant improvement. The good news is that you have good body awareness and you respond well to instruction. The most intimidating session was with a senior official whose title was never mentioned. He was a distinguished man in his 60s with silver hair and piercing blue eyes that seemed to see everything. They sat in a windowless conference room with nothing but a table and 2 chairs. "Sarah," he began, "let's talk about commitment. This isn't a career you can try out for a few years and then leave if it doesn't work out. The training you would receive, the knowledge you would gain, the operations you might be involved in, all of that creates obligations that last a lifetime." Sarah felt the weight of his words. What kind of obligations? Security clearances that require ongoing scrutiny of your personal life. Restrictions on where you can travel and who you can associate with. The possibility of assignments that take you away from family and friends for extended periods. His expression was serious but not unkind. And the knowledge that your work, while important, will never be publicly recognized or celebrated. "You're asking if I can handle being invisible," Sarah said. "Essentially, yes. Can you find satisfaction in knowing your work matters, even if no one else ever knows what you've done?" Sarah thought about her quiet life in Cedar Falls, about the recognition she had hoped to gain through business success. "I think so. The work you're describing sounds like it would be fulfilling in ways that matter more than public recognition." The man studied her for a long moment. "What would you tell your family about your work?" "I don't know," Sarah admitted. "What would I be allowed to tell them?" "Very little. You would have a cover story. Probably something involving consulting work that requires frequent travel. Your family would have to accept that large portions of your life would be compartmentalized away from them." This was perhaps the hardest aspect for Sarah to contemplate. Her family was close, and the idea of maintaining such significant secrets from them felt deeply uncomfortable. "How do other people handle that?" she asked. "Some handle it better than others. It requires a particular kind of person. Someone who can maintain strong personal relationships while keeping professional boundaries absolutely secure." The day concluded with a brief meeting with Ms. Chen, who provided Sarah with information about the next steps in the process. "If you decide to proceed," Ms. Chen explained, "you would finish your senior year of college while maintaining periodic contact with us. After graduation, you would enter a training program that lasts approximately 18 months. During that time, you would be paid a salary and provided with housing and benefits. And after the training, assignment to an operational unit. The specific role would depend on your performance during training and organizational needs at the time." Ms. Chen handed Sarah a folder containing detailed information about compensation, benefits, career progression, and lifestyle considerations. "Take this back home with you," she said. "Read it thoroughly. Discuss it with people you trust, within reasonable limits, of course, and make your decision carefully. This isn't something you want to rush into." That evening, alone in her hotel room, Sarah spread the contents of the folder across the bed and tried to absorb the magnitude of what she was considering. The salary information was impressive, significantly more than she could expect to earn with her business degree, at least initially. The benefits were comprehensive, including healthcare, retirement planning, and educational opportunities. But the lifestyle requirements were daunting. Extensive travel, unpredictable schedules, the need to maintain cover stories, and the possibility of dangerous assignments. It was a career that would demand everything from her: her skills, her time, her loyalty, and her discretion. Sarah walked to the window and looked out at the lights of Washington, D.C. Somewhere in this city, and in cities around the world, people were working to solve problems and prevent crises that the general public would never know about. The idea of being part of that invisible network of dedicated professionals was both thrilling and sobering. She thought about Marcus and his team, about the confidence and purpose she had seen in their work. They had found something worth dedicating their lives to, something that gave meaning to the sacrifices they had to make. Sarah picked up her phone and dialed her parents' number. Her mother answered on the second ring. "Sarah, how did it go today?" "It was intense, Mom, really intense. I learned a lot about what this kind of work would involve." "And?" Sarah took a deep breath. and I think it might be exactly what I'm looking for. But I need to finish school first and think about it more. We trust your judgment, honey, her mother said. Whatever you decide, your father and I will support you. After hanging up, Sarah felt a sense of clarity beginning to emerge. She wasn't ready to make a final commitment yet, but she knew she wanted to keep this door open. The girl who had been replacing targets at Thunder Ridge shooting range was discovering that she might be capable of much more than she had ever imagined. Flight to Washington, D.C. was Sarah's first time on an airplane. As the small regional jet lifted off from the airport 2 hours from Cedar Falls, she pressed her face to the window and watched her familiar world shrink to a patchwork of fields and roads below. By the time they reached cruising altitude, everything she had ever known was invisible beneath a blanket of clouds. A professional-looking woman in her 40s met Sarah at Reagan National Airport. She introduced herself simply as Ms. Chen and led Sarah to a black sedan waiting at the curb. "How was your flight?" Ms. Chen asked as they navigated through D.C. traffic. "Exciting," Sarah admitted. "I've never been anywhere like this before." Ms. Chen smiled. "The city can be overwhelming at first, but you'll get used to it. We've arranged for you to stay at a hotel near our facility. Tonight you should rest and acclimate. Your first assessment begins at 8 a.m. tomorrow." The hotel was nicer than anywhere Sarah had ever stayed. A modern business-class establishment with marble floors and uniformed staff. Her room on the 12th floor offered a view of the Potomac River and monuments she had only seen in textbooks. That evening, Sarah walked around the nearby area, marveling at the energy and diversity of the city. People from all over the world moved purposefully along the sidewalks, speaking different languages and wearing clothes that reflected a dozen different cultures. It was exhilarating and intimidating at the same time. The next morning, Ms. Chen collected Sarah and drove her to an unremarkable office building in Virginia, just across the river from D.C. The facility looked like any other corporate headquarters, but Sarah noticed the sophisticated security measures, multiple checkpoints, biometric scanners, and guards who were clearly more than typical rent-a-cops. "Today you'll meet with several different departments," Ms. Chen explained as they rode the elevator to the 7th floor. "Think of it as a series of conversations rather than tests. Everyone you meet today already knows about your performance at Thunder Ridge." The first meeting was with a psychologist, a friendly man in his 50s who asked Sarah about her background, her motivations, and her goals. The questions seemed casual, but Sarah sensed they were carefully designed to reveal aspects of her personality and thought processes. "What attracts you to this kind of work?" the psychologist asked. Sarah had been thinking about this question for days. "I think it's the combination of intellectual challenge and meaningful purpose. At the shooting range, I realized I have abilities I never knew about. The idea of developing those abilities in service of something important appeals to me." "And what concerns you most about the prospect of this career?" "Honestly, the fear that I'm not as capable as that one day suggested, that I got lucky and created false impressions about my abilities." The psychologist made notes on his pad. "That kind of self-awareness is actually a positive indicator. Overconfidence is much more dangerous than appropriate humility." The next session was with a technical specialist who tested Sarah's observational and analytical skills. She was shown photographs and asked to identify details and patterns. She was given written scenarios and asked to propose solutions to complex problems. To her surprise, the exercises felt natural and engaging rather than stressful. "You approach problems systematically," the specialist observed, "but you also trust your intuition when logic alone isn't sufficient. That's a valuable combination." Lunch was with Marcus, who appeared without warning in the facility's cafeteria. "How's it going so far?" he asked, settling into a chair across from Sarah. "I'm not sure," Sarah admitted. "Everyone's being very nice, but I have no idea if I'm doing well or poorly." Marcus smiled. "You're doing fine. The fact that you're here at all means you've already passed the most important test," which was demonstrating natural ability that can't be faked or trained. Everything else, knowledge, skills, procedures, can be taught to the right person. But instincts like yours are either there or they're not. 8 months later, Sarah stood in the same spot at Thunder Ridge shooting range where she had first met Marcus Thompson. But everything about her perspective had changed. She was 3 weeks away from graduating summa cum laude with her business degree, and in 6 weeks, she would report to a classified training facility in Virginia to begin the most challenging phase of her life. The decision hadn't been easy. After returning from Washington, D.C., Sarah had spent weeks wrestling with the implications of the path she was considering. She had researched everything she could about intelligence careers, talked to her academic advisors about career alternatives, and even interviewed for several traditional business positions. But nothing else had felt right. The corporate interviews had left her feeling empty, as if she was considering a life that belonged to someone else. The memory of that day with the SEALs, the sense of purpose, the utilization of abilities she hadn't known she possessed, the feeling of being part of something larger than herself, had haunted her. The turning point had come during Christmas break, when Marcus had visited Cedar Falls. The meeting had been carefully orchestrated to appear casual. They had, coincidentally, encountered each other at the local diner where Sarah was having lunch with friends from high school. "How's school going?" Marcus had asked, sliding into the booth across from her after her friends had left. "Good," Sarah had replied. "I'm on track to graduate in May. Dean's List again this semester." "And your decision about our conversation last summer?" Sarah had looked around the familiar diner, with its red vinyl booths and local high school memorabilia on the walls. Everything about the place represented the safe, predictable life she had always assumed she would live. "I keep thinking about what you said about opportunities not coming around very often," she had admitted. "I don't want to look back in 10 years and wonder what might have happened if I had been brave enough to try." Marcus had smiled. "That sounds like someone who's made up her mind." "I think I have. But I'm scared." "Good. If you weren't scared, I'd be worried about your judgment. Fear means you understand the magnitude of what you're considering." The conversation had continued for over an hour, with Marcus providing more details about the training process and what Sarah could expect in her early career. By the time he left, Sarah had felt certain about her choice. The hardest part had been telling her parents. They had been supportive but worried, especially her mother, who had spent weeks researching government careers and their associated risks. "I know you can handle whatever challenges this brings," her mother had finally said. "I just wish it didn't have to be something so secretive and potentially dangerous." "Mom," Sarah had replied, "I've spent my whole life being safe. Maybe it's time to find out what I'm really capable of." Now, standing at the shooting range on a warm May afternoon, Sarah reflected on how much had changed since that fateful day the previous summer. She had maintained her part-time job at the range throughout the school year, but Colonel Henderson had given her increasingly complex responsibilities. She had become his unofficial assistant manager, handling scheduling, inventory, and customer relations. More significantly, she had used the range to continue developing the skills that Marcus and his team had identified. With Colonel Henderson's permission and guidance, Sarah had practiced advanced marksmanship techniques, studying ballistics and precision shooting. She had also read extensively about intelligence analysis, international relations, and strategic thinking. "You're not the same person who started working here last summer," Colonel Henderson observed, joining her at the observation area. "No," Sarah agreed. "I'm not. Sometimes I wonder if that person ever really existed, or if I was just hiding from who I actually am." Henderson nodded thoughtfully. "Some people spend their whole lives never discovering their true capabilities. You're lucky to have found yours so young." Sarah's phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. "Congratulations on your impending graduation. Looking forward to working with you soon. MT," she smiled, knowing that Marcus was probably somewhere nearby, keeping an eye on her final weeks of civilian life. The organization she was joining clearly believed in thorough preparation and ongoing assessment. The afternoon customers began arriving, hunters preparing for spring turkey season, recreational shooters, and a few local law enforcement officers maintaining their qualifications. Sarah moved through her duties with practiced efficiency, but her mind was already focused on the future. In 6 weeks, she would begin training that would transform her from a small-town college graduate into a professional intelligence operative. She would learn advanced weapons handling, surveillance techniques, foreign languages, and analytical methods. She would be tested physically, mentally, and emotionally in ways she couldn't yet imagine. The training would be followed by assignment to an operational unit, where she would use her skills to protect national security interests around the world. She might find herself analyzing financial networks used by terrorist organizations, conducting surveillance in foreign cities, or working undercover to gather critical intelligence. It was a future that would have seemed impossible a year ago, but now felt inevitable. The girl who had thought her biggest challenge would be finding a good entry-level business job had discovered that she was capable of much more. As closing time approached, Sarah completed her final inventory count as an employee of Thunder Ridge Shooting Range. Tomorrow she would begin her last week of classes, and next week she would graduate. Then she would have a few days to spend with her family before reporting for duty. Colonel Henderson locked the front door and turned to face her. "Sarah, I want you to remember something as you head into this new life." "What's that, Colonel?" "You may be leaving Cedar Falls and you may be taking on work that requires you to become someone different in many ways. But never forget the values and character that got you to this point. Those things are what make you valuable, and they're what will keep you grounded when everything else gets complicated." Sarah felt tears welling up in her eyes. The colonel had become more than a boss. He had been a mentor and father figure during this transformative year. "Thank you, Colonel, for everything. For taking a chance on me, for believing in me, and for helping me prepare for this." Henderson smiled gruffly. "Just promise me you'll stay in touch when you can. And if you ever need a place to come back to and remember who you are, Thunder Ridge will always be here." As Sarah drove home that evening, she passed the familiar landmarks of her childhood. The high school where she had been a good but not exceptional student, the park where she had played as a child, the main street where she had assumed she would build a conventional life. All of those places looked the same, but Sarah knew she was seeing them through different eyes. She was no longer the girl who had grown up here dreaming small dreams. She had become someone capable of contributing to something larger and more important than anything she had previously imagined. The next chapter of her life would be written in places she had never seen, among people she had never met, facing challenges she couldn't yet comprehend. But Sarah felt ready. The shooting range had been more than a summer job. It had been the place where she had discovered her true calling. As she pulled into her driveway for one of the last times as a civilian, Sarah Martinez knew that her real life was about to begin. The girl who had been replacing targets had found her target, a purpose worthy of everything she had to give.